running the risk. On the railway, snow arrived early. It was heavier than usual. Whenever snow came, trouble was never too far away. Whether it was frozen points to getting stuck in deep snow drifts, the railway would always do its best to keep services going, but sometimes that could lead to trouble. James found this out one day. He was pulling a passenger train on a glorious winter day. Fresh snow was everywhere, and the cold but bright sun made everything as pretty as a picture. But at winter, the sun is low and bright and can shine in everyone's eyes. James and his driver and fireman were already struggling. They were running directly into the sun.
I can't see a thing!
Cried James.
How on earth does the Fat Control expect us to keep trains running if we're running blind?
Stop complaining. There's sure to be a tunnel soon and the sun will disappear.
Soothed his driver. As they entered the tunnel, things took a turn for the worst. Sun was shining on the snow, reflecting the light at the tunnel entrance. As James snorted out, he was faced by a great beam of light.
I can't see anything!
He yelled. The sun was so bright that when they went to pass a red signal, the guard leaned out of his brake van to see what the fuss was about. He noticed the red signal and applied the brakes on the coaches. The train skidded down the snowy rails. By the time the sun disappeared behind the cloud briefly, James saw what was ahead. Henry stood in front with a long goods train.
Stop!
He cried. The driver and fireman finally caught their bearings and applied the brakes, but it was too late. James hit the brake van in front with a loud clang. James's train and the brake van in front stayed on the rails, but a few trucks were knocked off the rails and sat on the sleepers. No one was hurt, but James's buffers were badly bent. Henry was cross.
You brag about your red paint so much. I thought you would have recognized the red signal!
Exclaimed Henry. James let off steam loudly. His driver had to calm him down, while the fireman ran to the nearest signal box to telephone for help. The guard protected the train with detonators to warn other trains of the blockage ahead. Edward arrived with workmen and a small crane. The Fat Controller was on board. He apologised to the waiting passengers, and they soon boarded Bertie the bus to take them to the next station, where another train was waiting to carry on with their journey. The Fat Controller soon asked about the accident.
It was the sun, sir. The sun was shining off the snow, which made it difficult to see, and when we came out of the tunnel it was almost impossible.
Explained the driver. The Fat Controller understood.
I was worried this might happen. We must put down speed restrictions at once.
He turned on his heel and hurried away to make the arrangements. Back at Tidmouth Sheds, the engines thought it was a great joke about James's accident.
They should wear sunglasses,
Joked Percy.
Anyone would think he was trying to get a nice tan.
Teased Gordon. Edward was fuming.
Stop it!
He shouted.
James had passengers on his train. If the guard hadn't put on his brakes, there could have been a horrific accident. Would it still have been a laughing matter then?
The engines felt ashamed. They soon understood the seriousness of the accident.
It's become so serious that the Fat Controller is putting a speed restriction down,
said Edward. Gordon was furious at this case, but before he could say anything, Duck eyed him up. Gordon thought to express his anger later. The next day, all the engines set off and left the shed to start work. The Fat Controller had not given the usual briefing in the morning. He was busy inspecting the line where speed restrictions should go. Gordon, Henry and Percy were still building up steam at the sheds. Gordon was talking loudly with Henry.
What a disgrace, putting up speed restrictions. Obviously it won't apply to the Express.
Why not?
Asked Henry.
Because the Express has priority.
Really? Well, you go the fastest. You'll carry the most of anything, you should go the slowest.
Excuse me?
You could have had a worse accident than James and might not survive to tell the tale.
I knew you wouldn't understand, Henry. After all, you're not an express engine.
No, you're right. But I also don't like to take risks. Remember, James ran into me. I want you to make it twice in a couple of days.
Henry didn't care if he had enough steam. He wanted to leave. His driver and fireman were on board, and Henry fumed away.
Pah! Speed restrictions won't stop me.
Gordon said to himself, or so he thought. As he steamed away, Percy had heard everything. But the small green engine wasn't too convinced.
He wouldn't really run the risk to keep his reputation,
he said to himself. Percy, unsure of the matter, rolled slowly away. Gordon arrived at the big station. There was snow on the ground, but the sun was nowhere to be seen. Gordon thought that if the sun was behind the clouds, the speed restriction would be called off. But he was wrong. As he set out onto the open main line, he was already breaking the rules.
You're pushing it, Gordon.
Shouted the driver.
I don't go slow.
Came the blunt reply, and Gordon went faster. All through the day, Gordon went over the limit and felt very proud of himself. Gordon was to pull the evening express. The sun was setting and starting to appear. Meanwhile, Percy was sat in the yards after shunting. He had been worried and had heard what Gordon had said on his mind all day. Duck pulled in next to him. He could see something was wrong.
Hello, Percy. Are you all right?
Well, there is something troubling me, Duck. Do you think Gordon would ever run risks?
Well, that engine is speed mad. Speed and reputation comes before common sense in Gordon's terms.
Percy looked even worried and told Duck what Gordon had said.
You must tell the Fat Controller at once. This is important.
Percy raced to the big station as fast as his wheels could. When Percy arrived, the Fat Controller was still doing his inspections. So instead, they told the station master. He knew where he was, so he phoned ahead at Edward's station. Out on the main line, Gordon was thundering along.
Speed restrictions, pah! What nonsense!
He grunted. Suddenly, the sun came out under the clouds and shone directly onto the snow in front of the train.
Good grief! I can't see!
Yelled Gordon. His driver and fireman couldn't either. The train whistled frantically as it drew near to Wellsworth Station. The sun quickly disappeared. In no time at all, the driver shut off steam and applied the brakes. Gordon screeched to a stop at Edward's station. There, standing on the platform, was the Fat Controller. Gordon looked nervous.
Taking risks on my railway and ignoring my authority is despicable. I thought with you being on my railway for so many years, you would have known that. But your reputation and image have gone to your smoke box. You'll be put in the shed and will not come out until you have seen sense.
Gordon was in disgrace. He was uncoupled from the train, and a new layout shop James took over. Gordon's fire was put out, and Edward pulled in to a rusty siding next to the sheds. Edward spoke wisely to Gordon.
If you're willing to risk passengers' lives who can keep your pride as bad railwaymanship, we can't have risk takers on the line.
Edward backed away. Gordon had a lot to think about. 2 weeks later, Gordon was allowed back onto the line, but only for pulling freight trains. He didn't moan, and he didn't grumble. He pulled a long goods train past Thomas's Junction, heading towards the mainland. Thomas and Toby watched him roll past.
I think Gordon has realised that speed isn't everything, and that being safe and reliable is.
Said Thomas.
I hope so. because it's going to take a long time for the Fat Controller to trust him again.
Gordon soon had the Fat Controller's trust again, and he knew never to betray it again, not just for the sake of himself, but for the sake of everyone.